Well, thanks everybody for joining us today. We're calling it a data round table. So obviously in the days of Zoom, we're, we're free of the table for good or for bad, but this is our environment for today. And I think, as many of you have talked about it, and even Jim and I were talking about earlier today, there's conversations not just around data and how to use data and all of these good things, but also how to lead those conversations and how to bring our stakeholders, bring the people that we're working with along with us. And I think that these are some of the most important conversations for practitioners and leaders as well, because if you can't get folks on board with you, then you really can't pass go. Oh wow, a few more people have joined us. Hello everybody. So let's go through and just do some lightning round introductions. I'll kind of call out, or you can toss it to people after you're done. Again, it'll be a little bit more to introduce quick introductions. I don't know if we have fully time to go into all that, but then we want to jump into our first topic here really quick. So Dorman, would you mind kicking us off just with a brief intro?
Is that because I'm the old guy, and old people go first? Is that it? So yeah, so sure, certainly. Hi, Dorman Bazzell. So by day, I lead data strategy for North America for Capgemini, a global consulting firm. By night, I'm on the board of a crypto company, as well as I've started the North Dakota Blockchain Council, as well as I'm a consultant, fractionalized chief data officer for a company called BizBlocks, which is kind of a venture studio. And prior to that, I was chief data officer for the state of North Dakota. Prior to that, worked with Slalom for a few years and a few other consulting firms. So pleasure meeting all of you.
Thank you, Dorman. Kit, would you mind going next?
Sure. Hey everyone, my name is Kit Menke. I am currently a data engineer at 1904 Labs, which is a STL-based IT consulting company. I've helped a lot of large clients here in St. Louis tackle their big data challenges, worked in a variety of roles, but I would say over the past 10 years or so, I've been focused mostly on real-time streaming data using tools like Spark and Storm. I also co-organized the St. Louis Big Data Meetup and do a couple of volunteer things, so that's me.
Thanks, Kit. Kerrine, would you mind going next?
No problem at all. Kerrine Nelson. I lead a small consulting company right now focused solely on successful product and services adoption. What does that mean? I take all the fantastic project, program, and product leadership that I've done and completed successfully and tie that in with the science and the art of change management so that I can get business stakeholders to understand the value that we're driving towards and influencing the stakeholders needed to adopt whatever it is we're doing. I've worked across consulting, a couple of industry clients, and that's really what I love and I do on a day-to-day basis. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you. Alex, would you mind going next?
Sure thing. So I'm Alex Cruz, and I'm the CEO of PenPath. And PenPath is an insights and analytics platform specialized in enabling e-commerce companies. So what that means is automating reporting and dashboards and insights across e-commerce sales, marketing, customers, products, pulling in from Shopify, pulling in from Amazon, Magento, BigCommerce, and actually helping our stakeholders and users interpret that data. And I think, that's where I'm very passionate, is how do we enable these e-commerce companies to truly understand their business and achieve their business objectives. So that's what I do.
Cool. Thanks, Alex. Ariana, would you be able to go next for us?
Of course. Hey all, my name is Ariana. I'm a principal at Slalom Consulting, and my primary area of, I don't know if expertise is the right word, but I'll say what I usually find myself working in is within data science. kind of the full gamut. Sometimes I'm just working with clients to like brainstorm or get them unstuck or maybe build out a POC, but all the way through like getting them unstuck in the production side of things. I would say my introduction is a little bit more broader than that. Naturally, by working with companies, trying to get a model going, I encounter a lot of setbacks. Sometimes that's on the technology side, like they just don't have the infrastructure in place to support this or really make it easy to build it out without kind of doing a hack job. A lot of times, though, it's more on the business resistance to change, way of doing it, not trusting what this model is telling me. So I've kind of found myself leaning more into data enablement, sometimes just working with teams more, sometimes a little bit more broadly, thinking about how to change and communicate upwards to trust and use data and break those old habits. So that's it.
Thank you. Thank you. Jim, would you be able to go next?
Sure. I'm Jim McBride, based here in St. Louis with a small niche consultancy that specializes and focuses on applied artificial intelligence, machine learning, and industrial spaces.
Cool. Thank you, Jim. Harry just told us in the chat that he wrote a book. So I don't know if anybody else wrote a book.
Oh, by no means it is not marketing. Apache Flink, in my honest opinion, it is one of the best real-time processing. It is the best. I can talk about it for one day. It is solid. It is very well written. But anyway, that's all the topic. I'm Hari Rajaram. I am a senior director working at Procore. Procore is a construction software company. It's if you consider Databricks Snowflake in the world of data, you can think Procore equivalent to construction, as simple as that. Before Procore, I was at Amazon. I was at a leadership level over there, worked with Kinesis and Kafka teams, and also worked on differential privacy with Alexa. I also had my own startup before that, did work on a couple of startups also.
Perfect. Thank you for being here, Harry. And Josh, last but not least.
You don't know that. I could definitely be least. I'm Josh. I have a PhD in organizational communication, and I teach 19-year-olds stats. And I've done that for about 20 years. And 6 years ago, I jumped into the HR tech space and worked for a company also full-time, 15.5. And I co-created their employee engagement heat map. And so I'm a psychometrician and look at drivers and how they predict outcome variables, and worked on 2 other startups as well. Just doing, I realized I'm not a true data scientist because they gave me an Excel query that I was like, oh, I got to go way back to figure this one out. So I am very much using statistical analysis for predictive modeling using psychometric data. That's where I sit, but I'm also a data nerd, and so all the new stuff that's coming out, everyone's got my attention. But yeah.
Cool. And I think this is, because this is about communication, I think that's important too. Anyway, to jump into our first topic, I think that there's this gap between, you might call it digital transformation and AI. And there's maybe different ways to say it, but I think, sometimes I think about it as the first house in a new housing development where there's not a road to it yet. And folks are kind of like, I want to get to that house. How do you get me there? And many of us find ourselves either on that road or helping people on that road or building that road. So I'd like to open that up. Where do you all find people are at? How are you interacting with that world right now? And where do you see folks coming into the gap? How are you kind of, so to speak, minding that gap?
Simon, you know the drill, right? If you don't voluntold, no one is going to speak up first. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to volunteer Kit then. I'm going to say, hey, Kit, let's do it.
All right. I mean, in my opinion, just from what I've seen working at 1904 Labs, a lot of the companies we talk to are not ready for AI. They desperately want to do something with AI and ML. But I know at least one project we went into, they had hired another company to try to do some AI and ML work, but the data wasn't even in a place where it could support any of the AI stuff that they wanted to do. So that's why I feel fairly confident about data engineering, because all these people who want to do AI and ML need a lot of work to get their data into any sort of state where you can support these sorts of ML pipelines. So how to mine the gap? I mean, it's really, in my opinion, building that like good foundation that can support those ML processes.
Yeah, that's good. Harry, what are you seeing?
Yeah, so we are using GenAI, right? I mean, it's a public information. Procore, we did release something called Copilot, right? But we are still maturing on that aspect. The reason being data, right? I run the data platform, at least technically, right? We want to ensure that there is data governance over there. We need to ensure that the data quality is good, right? It's not only Procore per se. It's any company who wants to get onto this GenAI bus, right? Everybody, let's be honest. Any company in the world, they are using this word called GenAI. To be honest with you, it is not rocket science. It has been there for a while. Because of OpenAI, people are now understanding what this LLM, SLM. We are using this word called SLM, small language models. That's a reality. And that's what industry is now moving towards, right? Scanning this document and things. But the core component is the data. And I still feel that the digital transformation was the starting point, right? What is digital transformation, right? Use new technologies for doing your business. So in that process, what we have done is everyone, right? We try to use a lot of technologies to make our data better, but we have made a mess out of it, right? Now, for having a good LLM or SLM, we need good quality, good data quality. So we are right now in this period where, like, okay, I need a good LLM, but you know what? I don't have a good data because my digital technology has screwed up my data, right? So we are now trying to strike a balance, right? First, let's fix the data, right? In the meantime, let me see for new incoming data, I will ensure that my data is good enough for my LLMs. That's where I feel that everybody is moving towards, and I'm no different. I'm also moving towards that balance, striking a balance between the old data and the LLM, the model data. That's my take.
That's great. Jim, I know we were talking a little bit this morning, and when we're coming into situations where these solutions could be helpful, sometimes we're getting I don't know, even pushback, but just people are kind of like, I don't believe you that you can use these technologies to solve this problem. Could you kind of talk a little bit about what you're experiencing?
Yeah, I think it's an outgrowth of things that I've experienced in other kind of waves of transformation that happened over the last 20 years, at least in my career, working with companies here in St. Louis and abroad. This was a little different though, because leaders are under a huge amount of pressure from boards, their leadership, whatever the structure is above them, because to all of our benefit, I would say OpenAI helped create a way for lay people to interact with this technology that's been the domain of advanced mathematics and was kind of shrouded in mystery, and behind, putting that behind a chat bubble and letting people interact with it has really opened people's minds. So there's a lot of pressure and they're trying to figure it out. But I find often we'll get invited to speak about a problem set. I get invited to help talk about how we might solve a problem set. And sometimes people have even though they ask for that conversation, there's something kind of off-putting about being able to say that we can solve or help you solve this problem that's plagued your company, department, industry, whatever this is, for a long time, because we're able to leverage technology that's, it's possible now. It's possible, probable, and likely. So I don't know if others kind of see that, but we often get pushback. It can come from various places, often from some of the data groups themselves, and sometimes from whoever the business leader is. It's like this challenged kind of moment of can you really do it? And we work through that by helping show evidence of efficacy and capability and things that we've done that are similar or the same. But I often find that besides just the science and the math and delivering the capability, there's a lot of like counseling that goes with that. I don't know a better word to use, or if you guys have a better word to use, right? It's like, and I mean it respectfully, truly to our clients. It's like a business therapy almost, right? Anyway, I don't know if the rest of you kind of experience your own version of that or not, but I find that it's really important to address both. Like trying to do one or the other, actually, I find not very useful in general, but both tends to get it done. It's just interesting. Anybody else experience this or anything like it?
Yeah, Jim, I love the way you phrase it, called counseling, right? Because I think the biggest challenge is if you start at the top of an organization and work your way down from a layering of challenges and opportunities, right? What you see is that, first of all, the business doesn't even know how to think about the problem, right? They don't know how to think about the problem of their own data. So let's start back with data, right? So which is why their data is a train wreck, right? And they can't use it. And now they come screaming and saying, we want to use Gen AI. And I tell them, well, we've been telling you how to clean up your data for the past 20 years, and you haven't done that. So what makes you think that you're ready to use Gen AI, right? But then as you start moving back, what you find is they don't know how to think about the problem, right? They look at Gen AI, right, like the marketing is, right? It's the silver bullet. It will solve all your problems. Well, it doesn't solve all your problems. It solves a specific problem space for you, and it can help you. It can optimize a lot of that activity, but it doesn't solve your problems, right? All of your problems. So you start working your way down, you come eventually down to the CFO and to the CIO, who are competing about their metrics and their KPIs, right? The CFO is saying, look, inflation is eating us alive. CIO says, you want to do this whole Gen AI and data thing, but I'm running on a mainframe. I can't do that on a mainframe. How do I help me understand how I help you if you can't help me? So I love counseling, and I'm going to start using it. It's going in all my decks now, by the way.
I also thank you. I'm glad it's useful. I wasn't sure if others were connecting that way or not. The other thing I would say too that I find actually kind of concerning is the push for Gen AI is everything. Like it's very clearly not, and it's very clearly not the solution for a number of things. It is a general aid for a number of things, and sometimes it can solve. But the fact that they're open to having the conversations now, I find very useful. But again, it tends to come with this counseling piece of it. So whether their data is together or not, I think being able to work with the human element that's present and help manage them through this change that I find unlike any others. I'm old. I've been around a long time. I've been through a lot of these kind of waves over time. I find this one to be uniquely structured this way.
Kerrine, I was going to say, I'd be really interested in hearing your take on the whole counseling side of it.
I know, I was here. No,
sorry,
Simon,
this is your.
No,
that was
fine.
Exactly what I was going to say.
I know it's exciting for me because it's in my mind, it's all enablement, and the gap really that I understand exists between digital transformation and the success of it with AI and Gen AI is maturity, right? Whether that's on the data front, data maturity front, or on the readiness front with, are the people within the organization ready for that? And what exactly does that mean? Are they at a place where they understand a business problem that they could take and pilot in a small, safe way, and then build on that? So when I think about right now the gap, it's really on a maturity, from a maturity standpoint and readiness standpoint for organizations who want to take it on. Sure, it's a hot commodity. Why not stick it on your data initiative, right? And you should. It makes sense, but I would say while we're planning for the technology side of it, we should absolutely plan and encourage clients to think about the readiness of the people within the organization. And that means your executive tier, your middle management tier, and the people who will be executing. Because more often than not, what we find is we have our executives who want to check that box that they have something running with AI in their organization. It meets a goal, it meets an objective. They want to test it out, prove it out, and hopefully scale and expand. And then we have our data scientists, we have our ML engineers who they know how to do this thing inside and out. But being able to connect the value that it can bring in a way that drives towards the outcome for that company, there's some gaps in understanding what the problem is that they can solve for and then solve for it, right? So for example, if you're a retail company, you may have a team filled with really brilliant people, right? But their test projects may not align with what the business objectives might be. Encouraging, I would say, all the stakeholders to become ready, whether through training, whether through becoming more aware of what AI can do for them, taking a small POC project and build on it and build through and then scale, I think will help with both maturity of it, also dependency on data maturity as well, obviously, and also build their capability with AI and ultimately a successful transformation program.
Yeah. So, and I think maybe to double click on some of the maturity and quality pieces, Josh, I don't know if you have any thoughts on this, but you all have kind of led the charge for a long time in academia of like qualitative, quantitative, and data and stuff like that. And I know some of that's a little bit ticky-tacky, but I guess my question is a lot of us are coming from the perspective of doing data at scale, getting data really fast, applying models to data. But as Harry was talking about, data is really a big part of this. And how do we know if the data is even good? Or how are you coming at some of these questions about the data itself?
Is that a question for me, or I'm sorry, Josh?
Yeah, who? Which one?
Oh, sorry, I was Hammonds. I wondered if you could give some thoughts on it.
Yeah, I think the kinds of data that companies are collecting are valuable, vastly important. I think you have behavioral data, which is you're collecting descriptive data that shows that when the customer does this, this happens, and they reach out in this way, right? And so you're tracking the kinds of behaviors, the clicks that they're making, right? But then you also have like sentiment or attitudinal data. So, in my space, we look at like what are drivers of employee engagement? What's keeping people thriving and performing well and productive at work? And everyone's tracking these like, well, they were logged on their email this many times. They're checking these frequencies and they're describing behavior. But it's like, have you asked them if they enjoy their job or find meaning or purpose? Well, we wouldn't know how to collect that kind of data, right? It's like, well, you have to ask them that data, right? And so there's this human element, like you said, the qualitative, and you can quantify it, right? Scale 1 to 10 and things like this. And so I don't think companies know the difference between behavioral data, attitudinal data, right? Sentiment data, whether that's you're collecting it qualitatively and then quantifying it, or how are you using that? And so just to collect, and there's so many, I was looking at performance reviews and they were collecting data on performance reviews and they're saying, well, how do we know what's keeping people and incentivizing them? It's like, well, you're not collecting any of that data that would attribute that. And so to do that, we have to reimagine the wheel of what kinds of data that you're actually collecting. What drives people? Is it the amount of creativity and autonomy that they have? You have to figure out how to collect that, right? And number of hours on a Zoom or not on a Zoom, or how many emails they get. That data doesn't explain the story that you're trying to tell here. And so they're trying to create a story from characters that don't tell that story. And then they're saying, make it work. Where's your magic wand? I thought you were a data scientist. And so, yeah. And so I'm intrigued by, even something simple as TikTok, where it's like the algorithm creates this data where it's like how long you stay on that screen sends a message that you like that for whatever, you stayed on that for a while, and then you sent it to 4 people. So there's some evaluation and value that's being collected that you like this, you enjoy this, and this is a sticking point, and all those sorts of things. But again, you're only getting so much when you're talking about how many times did they click a website or how many times did they do that. And so, Yeah, I don't know how to crack the code on attitudinal data just by collecting behaviors, because there's a chasm there. There really is.
So do you think that there's
Yeah.
another aspect to all this? Like, and this is a question for the group, and Josh, if you have thoughts on it too, but like, you know, obviously we have a tremendous amount of data already, but as part of this whole thing that we need to collect even more data, but in a very strategic way.
Yeah, I think and I don't know how you frame that to, like you say, you're counseling people, educating people, but I always start with, like, what story do you want to tell? What's the outcome variable here that you're trying to get at? Is it productivity? Is it consumer behavior? Is it how much you like something and associate and identify it with, right? To try to calculate the brand affiliation that somebody has with the Nike swoosh is very difficult to sort of grab. And how do you do that? And so you ask the marketing, the CMOs, like, what's the story you're trying to tell? What is the data you're collecting to tell that story? And then you've got to then reimagine ways that you're collecting that data. It's okay, well, now we need to start collecting this instead of that. And so, yeah, that's what I don't know is how is machine learning and AI picking up on some of those things already that you could tap into to complete that story. But to me, data always starts with that's where the counseling begins. What's the story you want to tell? And now we'll put the characters in play
around it. Yeah.
Yeah. And
I mean,
go ahead, Cruz.
I was going to say, at its core, right, where AI just does its pattern science. We're tapping into, if we want whatever story we're trying to tell, we're going to configure that as best as possible to the algorithms that we have access to. So if we have that story defined and we can go out and modify and, you know, try to get the results that we can get with that algorithm, I think that's, you just keep at it, Josh, right? Keep looking for information that supports that pattern that feeds the results that we're trying to get to, right? But yeah, it's a lot of counseling and a lot of educating along the way, because when you get into that space, right? Let's say you want to reduce response time, customer response time by X%, right? It's a magic wand at this point. So everybody wants the data yesterday to make that happen. And a lot of times we aren't mature within our organizations to supply that data with good enough quality that would support that pattern. So I just added on to what you were saying, but that's really how I see it. Coming up with a story and then making the case for having the quality data that would support good patterns that makes your algorithm work well, right, to get to your result. Otherwise, you know, you talk about garbage in, garbage out. This is like a bombshell in, an explosion out. So go ahead, Dorman. I'm sorry.
No. I was just going to say that, Josh, between what you've said and Kerrine around change management. So, you know, it's very tempting to say that business gets data, but I'm discovering more and more that a lot of the leaders at the top don't get it, and what they see is they see an Excel spreadsheet, right? Because most companies run their business on Excel anyhow, right? That somebody has taken 8 hours to get, you know, just to collect data, and then another 4 days to be able to crunch the data, clean it up so that they can actually use it. And so they're constantly looking in the rearview mirror, and they look at it and say, well, this looks good to me. Where's my data problem? I don't have a data problem. And so I have a client who, the executive leadership team, that's what they tell me. They just told me this week they're printing money. How can they possibly have a data problem? And Josh, to your point, we're not telling the story right. We're not telling them the story that helps them understand the what their challenges are, right? And Kerrine, to change management, right? We're not teaching them, right, how to think about it in a different way. And to me, those two things really represent the core challenges that I face on a daily basis in conversations with clients.
You're absolutely right, Dorman. I would say 90% of the work that I do today is spending time making people aware of what we're doing at every level. So I'll take a step back and double click into the change management and enablement piece. Sorry if Simon, you can tell me to stop whenever, but adoption is such a without adoption, first of all, whether it's a product, a service, transformation, initiative, anything, you are not going to succeed. And people on LinkedIn know that I harp quite a bit on this. If you don't have the adoption levers in place, forget it. Don't even bother to invest your money. I spend most of my time today educating and reinforcing to leaders at the level, we call them level 1 champion, level 2, and level 3 champions, executive, mid-manager, and everyone else, what exactly they need to do, and trying to figure out exactly what they need as well to bridge that gap with understanding what's needed to adopt this thing that we're doing, right? And it's not just telling them, it's not an email, it's not just a training, it's putting the mechanisms in place for them to continue being receiving this reinforcement when the transformation has happened, or when the product is released, or when the service is released, right? So having the mechanisms where they can always tap back into and say, oh, why are we doing this again? What does this number, what does this number mean on my dashboard? Right? Because again, Dorman, to your point, I spend a lot of time with executives trying to figure out why is net sales showing this instead of this, right? And having something that they can refer to all the time as a reinforcing mechanism helps. It helps over time, and then they can become the advocates for helping others within their organization adopt the product. So a lot of the time, again, it's the adoption and having those mechanisms in place to not only do the counseling, but they can self-serve as well as you go along. So going back to the adoption piece, that's really my spiel, Simon.
Do you all think it's reasonable? Do you all think it's reasonable for clients to be as expertly and pedantically versed in information theory and data structures and the requirements for how those things should be against their business goals?
I personally don't think so. I think they need to have a mindset of agility and learning, because things will always be changing within their organizations, right? Today it's AI, tomorrow it may be something else. But yes, you need to have an MVP understanding of how your business is functioning, the infrastructure, and so on. But I think more importantly, Jim, it's to have the capability to adapt and learn new things as they come on board, because your organization is always going to be changing. So AQ, your quotient for adopting new things.
I think they should have an elementary understanding of correlation versus causation. I think they should know the strengths and weaknesses of the types of data that's being collected. I think they should know about the bias that's involved in that data collection, right? So I think they should take my stats at least the first 2 weeks of my one-on-one stats class. Yes.
Is that what it is?
But information theory and critical analysis of empirical thought, maybe not.
Yeah, no, that's so this is good. Like, we're not going to totally shift gears, but I think just to kind of make sure that we stay on a focused track here, let's turn the page a little bit to foundations. And again, just to kind of continue with the housing analogy, back in the day, my aunt and uncle moved into a new construction house and they didn't have the sod laid on either side of the house. After several months, all the dirt eroded, basement flooded. Was not a good situation. And I think some of us, can maybe remember times where we were put into a predicament, needing to choose between foundations and kind of those bigger goals and projects, and with data and things like that. There's a lot of foundations to put in place. And so wanted to continue to kind of double click on this, is like, as we're asking people to have a baseline of understanding, and as we're, trying to take them towards a bigger North Star, what foundations do we need to put in place? And I'd like to start this with you, Alex. I don't know if you'd like to talk about some of what you all are doing on the product side, but what are some of the foundations that you found that you really need in place to do some of this stuff well?
Yeah, sure. So, I think foundational, I think some of the insights that have been shared already are very true to what we see. What works for us is talking to customers and making sure they even know how to define what metrics mean and what they translate into. And so usually that's a really good starting point. And then teaching them that there's a finite amount of metrics that they probably care about, that they probably will work with, and thinking of them as like ingredients in a recipe. And if they can combine metrics, attach them to dimensions, they can tell a story, right? For example, the metric is number of new customers. Okay, there's only two ways to grow a business. You either get more customers or get your customers to pay you more. So what we'll say is, okay, how do we, in your e-commerce store, right? How do we understand how are you getting new customers, right? Okay, they're coming from these different places. Okay, what are they buying? And so that's how you start to facilitate conversations. And it starts at the foundational level, at the business impact level. And then you can start getting into, okay, who are the different teams at play? We have an agency. Okay, is the agency performing? And then you have metrics for them. And so, I think that a lot of conversations right now are happening around AI. And it's like, AI is, to me, a spaceship, right? It's like, wouldn't it be cool to have a spaceship? But it's like most people don't even know how to ride a bike, right? We spend so much time just training them. What does this metric really mean? So our company, we don't even worry about AI. And there's so many players that are trying to tout AI, but it's like, we just want really clean data. Like, can we match Shopify and Amazon in a way that enables these companies? So that's where our head's at. And then we have to teach them how to interpret, how to ask the right questions, and how to align leadership teams that many times don't even have targets, right? And so you try to inspire them, have them set targets, have them reverse engineer how to get to that target. And honestly, there's enough success to happen in there where, it's sometimes I'm just like, we have explored AI and different things, but foundations is certainly a good approach to success. That's the market still lacks a lot of maturity.
Yeah. Well, Harry, I know you deal a lot with not only foundational things, but you're dealing with heaps of data as well in your products. What are some of the foundations you found important?
You're asking me, right?
Yes.
Oh, yeah, sure. Okay, sorry. I wasn't sure. By the way, I need to probably leave in like 5-10 minutes if that's okay. Okay, for me, it's all about reference patterns. You need to have a reference pattern where your data, like irrespective of the data flow, data pipeline, it doesn't matter. You need to have a reference pattern for everything that you deal with data, including AI. If you don't have a pattern, it is not going to work out. Your foundation is not going to be stable at any given day if you don't have a reference pattern, right? Be it streaming, you need to say that, hey, you know what, this is the so-called protocol. This is the protocol you need to use. This is the pattern you need to, this is how you need to define your header, right? Simple. Like there should be a data contract. There should be a pattern, period. If you don't have that, then it doesn't matter. The maturity of the data platform or ML platform, it's not going to scale at any given point of time. That's my take on the foundational things, right? I just also want to add, I know that people are like, at least from this forum, I think Gen AI probably, it's like from the understanding what I hear, we need to probably pay more attention, for me, Gen AI is revolutionary. I work day in, day out on LLMs. When I say day in, day out, it is the thing which has changed. It is the next internet for me. In 1998, the bulb which was on my mind when it happened, the internet, 1998, that's exactly what's happening right now in the world of Gen AI. I'm working in that faster pace on where we are building those models so that we can actually provide value to the customers. And in fact, I'm also doing a lot of personal projects with respect to Gen AI. So for me, Gen AI, yes, I understand data quality. Yes, I understand hallucination. Yes, I understand privacy. Yes, I understand security. I absolutely know that. There are researchers who are working on privacy, on this hallucination with LLM. I understand that, but it is the next revolutionary thing. In the next 1 to 1.5 years, we are going to go skyrocketing with respect to the world of Gen AI. That's my honest take. All the data quality and other things, it will automatically get fixed, because the data, at least the organization which I've worked for and which I'm consulting with, they are already in the maturity curve in making the quality better. This is my experience. Now they are moving towards on how do I make the models better. That's what they are actually moving towards. So that's my take on the Gen AI. For the first one, it's all about patterns. If you have a pattern, your foundation, it should be good.
That's good. I know, Kit, you said you do a lot of stuff with data streaming and such. What have you seen this reference pattern stuff play out in your world, and what does that look like?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's kind of like having the best practices, or the, like Hari said, having the architecture designs ready to go. I mean, I think that's the fun part of data engineering, is in taking those and implementing it at a client. But yeah, I agree. I think having the pattern is necessary.
Are there any other foundations that you've seen that are important?
Well, I like the threads about talking to leadership and trying to define the metrics. I think we try to do that a lot, talk to our stakeholders and figure out like what they're actually trying to do, because we've had a few different projects that they've just they don't understand the scale that they're operating at or how much data they have, and they try to do too much, or they want everything. They want like every metric all at once. And a lot of the companies, the big clients that we've worked with in St. Louis, there's just too much data to do everything all at once. So finding kind of that, like Kerrine said, having that like small POC and focusing on that first. I mean, I think we've been pretty successful at that, where you've really focused on what's most important, that metric, get that down, get that implemented, make sure it scales well, and then build upon it without trying to eat the whole elephant.
Yeah, as long as it's not a test data engine. I'm joking. That was an inside joke. Sorry. Ariana, I know that you talked about kind of how you've done some broad swaths in this world. What are some of the foundations that you've seen in your work that have been very pivotal or have accelerated efforts?
Yeah. I think we've talked a lot about kind of the data infrastructure being important, and so I won't belabor. I'll just say yes, I agree with that for sure. One thing maybe I'll be working with a client of one of the roles in production, or even just getting like a dashboard or something where the business is seeing this data for the first time, and they're so focused on this and getting it running, they're not thinking about what the next 2 to 3 steps are going to be, that once the business starts interacting with this, they're going to want more. Like, it's never the end, and they're happy, even if it's just, I want new additions, or wow, this is really cool, can you expand this model to do this as well? Like, it's going to grow. And sometimes that involves making sure they have the infrastructure in place, but a lot of times it's making sure that their team is prepared to take it on. So thinking through, right now you have like a jack of all trades doing everything, engineering, science, talking to the business, building the dashboard. You can't sustain that when you start to have multiple things going on. Even things like talking through a process, like when you have these like really small teams that are just venturing into this space, a lot of times there's no standard process. So it's someone just pinging someone and saying, can we do this? And you get really deep really quickly and start to lose sight of what's going to be most impactful and valuable for the business, because you have such limited time. So getting to think through what is a process that we can figure out, what is worth the squeeze, what is just, this person has a lot of noise, and so we're working on their work, and really make sure that their data team can grow and is actually adding that value to the business. So a lot of the like people part as well as the technology, I'm finding we just don't think through that until it's too late.
Yeah, that's good. And I swear I'll go back to facilitator after this one interjection, but I think the collaboration is very important too. I mean, there's when you talk about reference patterns, right? It's like sometimes if you're in the data science world, I mean, you might help with the reference pattern, and then in some workflows you wouldn't see it until it's on the other side, and like an analytics platform, and there's a lot of stuff in between that. And so, building in notebooking solutions and stuff where people can work together and the engineers and the scientists can collaborate. I think that's been a big boon to a lot of these efforts that I've been around. So I'll step off my.
So Simon, I was going to say, and I'm not in the psychology field, so those of you who are, please feel free to disagree, because I'm just making stuff up as I go. But what I found in business is that people, and just in life in general, people act in patterns. They don't necessarily think about the patterns in which they're acting in, right? Because they've become so accustomed to how they operate. Perfect example that I share with every client is that you get I can tell you 5 things about every client I've done for the past 36 years I've worked with, right? 1, they don't trust their data. 2, they don't trust their data because they don't know where their data comes from. 3, their data quality is horrible. 4, they have no data governance. And 5, they run their company on Excel. I get every client to this day, they're doing that. And the reason why executives, when they get a spreadsheet and they say, well, that must be the number, is because they're operating within a pattern they haven't thought about, right? When you start getting executives to think about the problems of data, that's when you see change happens, because then they realize, oh my gosh, I've got a team of 5 people and all they do is sit around and play. They're spreadsheet jockeys. That's all they do. So the pattern then has to be, how does that team act? And then once you identify how the team acts, right, what do you do with the people then who, once you've changed your data, once you've changed your behavior, you've changed your patterns, you've changed your processes, what do you do with the people who know the data intimately, right? Do you lay them off because you've automated it now with Gen AI? Do you upskill them? Do you reskill them throughout the organization? So again, it's people who they live inside of a pattern. I do this myself, right? It takes me a while to figure out, oh shit, I'm living inside of a pattern here. Okay, I've got to change this pattern, right? Because I've just done it this way for so long, right? And it must be right because I'm 62 years old and therefore it's just the way it's going to work, right?
Yeah, I think we just got fined too for you saying a swear word. I'm just joking. We're on Zoom. We're good. It was a joke.
Here's Dorman.
Sorry.
No, you're good.
That clip will be used for branding purposes, though, without your permission.
Branding. Yes,
of course.
Yeah. So patterns and so maybe what you're saying, Dorman, is that even the way that your staff is structured and the way that folks interact with the information is just as foundational as some of these other pieces of the technology.
Absolutely. Yep. And they're broken, right? Those foundations are broken. When you have a person who sits around all day and does nothing but crunch data on an Excel spreadsheet, you have a bad foundation.
And there's a lot of those.
Go ahead, Kerrine.
I was going to say there's a lot of those, Dorman.
Yeah.
A lot of those within so many organizations just cranking away at spreadsheets still. So yeah, the fundamentals, I would say, definitely should include frameworks. Start with basic frameworks of, what it would look like to take Kerrine from enablement to teaching, for example, right? That's the learning or enablement piece. How do you enable a role to do more than one thing,
Mhm.
and make them such that they want, well, one, they get used to doing change, productive change, and they look forward to it, and they're motivated by it, right? So I'm not a psychologist by any means either, but believe me or that Pavlov's theory, it works 100% with understanding individual needs or group needs or team needs. And you tap that right into the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and you have your change management sorted out. So it's a big part of it is understanding what needs to be true for each group, right? At an MVP level as a fundamental to get them inspired and moving and motivated, right? Otherwise, you come in, you
So,
take someone's spreadsheet that they've been living in for 30 years,
Right.
not
Right.
happening,
yeah,
right?
security
So,
blanket. So we just have a few more minutes. So let's just double click on one thing here. We're talking about these foundations, and then Jim raised a good question on the chat. So it's like, is it pretty binary? It's like either if people have good foundations, you can help them. If they don't have good foundations, you can't. Or are we kind of talking about recreating the foundations as part of the effort? Let's talk about this for a minute. And Jim, if I butchered your question, feel free to re-ask it.
No, I just my general question is, does anybody feel convicted that this is particular to data? I mean, clearly data is important to data practitioners, but I would argue that there's been lots of other things that are particularly pedantically important to those practitioners. Is it really the question of, do you know your business? Do you know the process you're trying to improve, whatever that is? And if the client does, clearly it's easier to work with them. At least it's easier to get to speak the same language. And if they don't know those things, then seems like it's our opportunity to help them. Is any of this specific to data? I don't think so, other than I don't know how to do this work without accuracy and precision, and that makes it that much more important here. What do you think?
I was just going to say that, like, for us, we really think about the emotion that they may feel when they experience data. Some different people that we work with have different tolerance. And so if the emotion can be positive, as in, hey, or like not necessarily positive, but a strong emotion, you may kind of hack the human brain to do more with data. And so one thing that we did is just like a simple pacing dashboard, where it's like you set a goal, and like they can see in real time how they're pacing towards that goal. And if they're 20% behind or 20% ahead, that creates sort of the catalyst that we needed to then ask more questions and drive the data. And so I think that, like, these human emotions and different things that we're hardwired to do, you definitely have to leverage them wherever you can, and it can be very effective.
Yeah, Jim, I mean, I think it has, personally, I think it has everything to do with data. And you asked the question, do people know about their business? So I'm probably going to take you on a Russian writer's journey here, right? Explore a bunch of different tributaries here, but if I think about the conversations I have on a daily basis, right? It's all about data. Every conversation I have it's always about data. Why is it always about data? Because the CEO of the company has just said on their annual or quarterly call, we need to improve X, right? And those X are data. And then that's what the senior executives take, and they start peeling away at that. How do I get better data? How do I achieve those goals that improves our share price, improves shareholder profitability, et cetera, right? And so they starting from the very top, it's all about data. But going back to this conversation about patterns, right? It's the same pattern by which they try and solve the data problem, right? So your question on here is, any of this specific to data and data science? Absolutely. Because when you get to the lowest level of work, starting to work with data, if you can't work with your data, you can't solve the problems up above. What you end up doing is you end up hiring more people, right, to do the data, to solve the data problems. And I just, one of my clients, we just did a data strategy for them. And we clearly articulated to them three things. One, you don't have good data governance. Two, your master data is in it's a train wreck, right? And three, your analytics, you're not using your data and your analytics effectively to run your organization. Their response was, we'll do nothing because we're printing money. And so we must be
now,
doing. Yeah.
Yeah,
When they stop printing money, that's when they call the data strategists again.
That's right. That's right.
And I would just piggyback on that. I think we're on the precipice. I think we're on the seconds away from being able to collect anything that we want at any time for any reason. We'll be collecting pupil dilation, heart rate increase. I think we're seconds away from Apple Watches collecting biometric data to go, they get excited when they talk about this, put them in more projects that deal with this. And so again, I deal with engagement, retention, and that's the kind of data I collect. But when you're trying to help the executives need to be able to articulate the problem. The data strategist can't. So it's like, what's your actual problem? Well, my problem is we're losing our top employees to competitors. Okay, so that's a problem. Now it's my job as the data strategist to then, what are the ingredients that we need to collect to be able to show you, this is what's going to anchor this person here. This is what's going to keep this person here. This is why they're leaving. So now we know the ingredients. Now you're gonna have to allow me to collect that data. We're gonna see what excites people, what motivates them, what drives them. And so I'm gonna collect that data now. It's new data that we're collecting, but I have access to that because Meta Quest 3 VR is collecting all that while we're talking to each other on Zoom, right? And so I'm collecting all that, and I'm gonna paint this picture for you, but we're good with the problem that you want me to solve. Put that in stone, because I'll devote myself to collecting that data for you. And so I think that's where the executives need the training on, is like, you're not articulating your pain point enough. I'll find the characters to tell that story, but you need to articulate your problem better.
Yep.
I don't know. I hear that, and I've definitely done plenty of strategy engagements in various industries with various size companies, and I would agree in as much as I've yet to, with maybe one exception in a really long time, the clients have generally had challenges in data. So that's the easy find. And to me, the opportunity, though, as a practitioner, is the people that we are here that have the skill sets that we have and the knowledge and the capability. It's incumbent upon us to figure out a way to connect with them. And it's incumbent upon us to figure out a way to help them get to the data that they do need. I mean, I've been in plenty of scenarios where the data didn't exist for reasons that frankly weren't germane to getting to the outcome, but we were able to synthesize the data. We were able to create additional data. We were able to solve the problem. I think there's the world's filled with people that want to tell people how they're doing a bad job. And that's pretty common, right? Like that's true, or they wouldn't be asking us to help them. But maybe we can figure out better ways to connect with them and to help them get across the gap anyway, speaking to them in their language instead of our language.
Mm-hmm.
And that'll be part 2, maybe. I don't know, but this was really helpful, y'all. And I